Managers of Reddit, what is the stupidest thing an employee did that forced you to fire them? Not really a firing, but I had a crazy dude interview for a job which require an editorial skills test. Small company, no real HR department, so us managers had to do all the screening and everything ourselves. This dude showed up for the interview in a sweatshirt and jeans. He jumped up twice while I was trying to talk to him and ran outside the building without explanation. Then came back in. I thought I was being punk. Finally comes test time. I had to explain it to him like 5 times. He had 45 minutes to complete the 4 pages. He did not get through half a page in the time limit. Gave me a hard time about needing more time, but finally left. Within an hour or so after leaving, he started calling me incessantly. Did I get the job? I had a stack of tests to check, so didn't have an answer for him immediately, which ramped up the call frequency. I started screening all my calls. After I checked his test, I emailed and told him he failed and he was no longer in consideration for the job. He immediately called and started yelling at me on the phone. I hung up on him. He kept calling back, but I refused to pick up again. Then he started harassing me by email. He didn't believe he had failed. He wanted to see other people's tests to compare. He thought it was rigged. He thought I was out to get him. I finally had to have one of the male bosses call him and threaten him with legal action before he stopped harassing me. I made people walk me to my car for a few weeks. Was convinced he'd come back. Nut job. Sounds like him. He was an on-site computer tech. He gave his own business card to our customers and told them to call him directly next time. He'll give them a better deal. Our customers are very loyal. Multiple reported him doing this. Fired on the spot. An employee of mine drunkenly sent dong pics in the middle of the night to my boss and multiple other associates. I had to deliver the termination because she, my boss, was directly affected and I was uninvolved in the incident. When he asked why, I just slid the termination document across the desk and let him read the described events as written for his HR file. Even better, he was a former high school friend of mine. I had helped him interview for a lesser role many years prior. Busser kept staring at everyone's tea. I mean, literally everybody who was in the restaurant, especially co-workers, but also customers, and not just attractive females of a similar age. We're talking frail grandma Bettys with tennis ball walkers, gaze locked in, stationary, regardless of age, size, or other deterring factors. If it was a female, his eyes were laser locked onto Titty Town, USA. Of course, once I found out, he was fired immediately. That was a pretty awkward conversation. To this day, I have never encountered someone who admired breasts as much as he. I'm not a manager, but I worked with a manager of an IT service desk. Had a guy who was on the service desk and good at his job who looked at pee all day every day and just alt-tabbed it away when anyone came near him. He even worked right next to a bloke who only had to turn his head to see what he was looking at. But no one ever saw him or caught him. Anyways, when the internet logs were looked at, a routine thing, he popped up as looking at pee all day, every day. So said manager guy had to walk him out on the spot. This guy literally did any excellent job though, whilst looking at pee all day. Boss hired this new girl to work on one of our stalls at a market. She arrives and tells us she won't work with meat because she's vegan. Pointed out to her this is a sausage stall and as such we only sell meat. And she applied in person at the stall, so it's not like she didn't know in advance. No idea what she expected to happen. Left it to the boss to explain to her that if she'd either have to work with meat or she'd have to leave. Maybe she was hoping that she would get paid to do nothing. If I tell them I'm a vegan, they won't make me work and they can't fire me because of my beliefs. They'll have no choice but to pay me. I'm VP operations and an owner in the company. We hired a new girl to work in an entry-level position. We are about 130 people on site, so it takes a while to get to know everyone. I like to sit with everyone in the cafeteria from time to time. New girl begins chirping about how crappy the company is, doesn't like WA policies, etc. Then she starts mouthing off about how the owners are crappy, greedy scumbags. We rip off our customers, etc. Then she calls me out by name. She had never met me and doesn't know me and had no idea she was telling me rumors about myself. I kept it cool. Everyone else at the table lost their crap. Went on Facebook and recorded themselves. Live. licking a burger patty and putting in a bun, then putting it together and sending it down the line. We're friends on Facebook. I watched it live. I went in on my day off to fire them. Not the manager, but we had a young girl start in the deli counter of the supermarket I worked in. Her family was Lebanese and the very first day the girl's mother is just hanging around the counter watching everything. After a while the deli manager asks if she's okay. She said that she was just there to make sure her daughter is okay. The deli manager politely tells her that she'll be fine and she can go home, but the mother refuses. After a little while longer, the deli manager insists that she go home because she doesn't appreciate being watched as she does her job and interacts with the new girl. The woman still refuses. The deli manager then gives her an ultimatum. Go home now or you can take your daughter with you. That was the girl's first and last day at the supermarket. This one just makes me sad. My friend and next door neighbor wanted to leave his IHOP job but had no backup. I decided to hire him on at my own business for a couple dollars more an hour than he was previously making. He had been falling into a deep depression steeped in booze and I thought I could help him get his life back on track with a bit of extra $. The first week was fine, but when he started to not wake up for work on time or answer his door, I was forced to go to his back door and knock on his room window to wake him up. Since the company was appointment only and we dealt with personal vehicles, being late was a big problem. I politely warned him that he couldn't do that and continue to work here. The problem persisted and I had to let my friend and neighbor go. He is now heavily into H&M and can't find a job. It's seriously the most heartbreaking thing to know that you gave a fuck ton of effort to help a friend only to have him be a crap employee. This is why they say to never hire friends. I told a friend not to apply to my company. She did anyway because she was desperate for a job. Boss asks if I know her and I say she's a horrible employee. They hire her anyway because they were desperate for employees. She hated the job and they hated her. She lasted about a week. Working with friends sucks. I had an employee at a shoe store in a mall who had a few issues, but the one we were working on the most, and for which she had been written up, was that her family kept coming to visit her at work. Her children would climb all over the fixtures and she and her husband would ignore them. She would always greet a customer who would walk in, but then she'd go right back to talking to her husband. She didn't attempt to sell them shoes, her job, and they wouldn't interrupt her to ask for help. So she gets a final written warning and I try to explain to her how her actions are hurting sales, etc. We make a rule that her family can't be in the store, but she can visit them in the mall during her 15-minute breaks. She apologizes and I think I've gotten through to her, but one day I'm at home and I get a call from another employee to tell me that not only is her family in the store, but they've spread out a blanket on the sales floor and were having a picnic. I technically didn't get to fire her because she realized what was happening and quit before I said the words, and she threw her keys in my face. I wasn't the one who fired him, but my best friend at Chick-fil-A was terminated for smoking pot. How did they know he was smoking pot? Drug test? Arrest record? DWI? No. He went on breakout to the first row of the parking lot during the middle of the day and lit up with his windows rolled down. The owner's son GM was on the roof doing maintenance work. Guy I hired thought he could come in at 10 AM and work from home on Fridays. We were in research, so in theory we were flexible. Worked long butt hours on salary, so no OT. But there was always a crisis to solve. Always. And he was missing 25% of the time. So we told him to stop missing work or he was fired. He thought because we were so understaffed we were bluffing. We weren't. My old boss came into our lab so rarely that one time a co-worker just didn't work at all for a month straight. We were able to work from home 2 days a week if we wanted, but we had to let the team know we're doing it. He just dropped contact for a month. Boss thought I was joking when I told him. Didn't even bother to look at the door's logs. We had to scan a card to enter the building. My college town hamburger joint gets busy as frick on the weekends. We had a 5-man crew on a Saturday night and about an hour and a half into service I notice my fry boy is taking a hell of a long time bringing back frozen appetizers from the cooler. I leave expo in a huff and stomp to the back to yell at him, threw open the walk-in door. This short Irish leprechaun looking dumbass is getting his dong sucked by the new dish girl, owner's friend's barely legal daughter. Fired him after the dinner rush. No, she wasn't fired. Owner is a chauvinistic turd. As for everyone saying I shouldn't have fired him, he was a freaking liability in the kitchen anyway. And I'm sorry, but you don't do sexy times at work. Or if you do, everyone knows you do it in management's office with a locking door. Employee came to work the night before his shift. He was drunk, proceeded to crap in the parking lot. Hospital parking lot. He ends up working half his shift because security doesn't tell anybody. A dumb kid who worked for me had recently seen Beverly Hills Cop and thought the whole banana in the tailpipe gag was hilarious. So he shoved a bunch of bananas, 5 or 6 of them, into the exhaust of his buddy's car out in the parking lot. Well, he thought it was his buddy's car. Turned out it belonged to a rather fragile woman we also worked with, who freaked out big time at the thought of carbon monoxide poisoning. Long story short, she calmed down eventually, and Doofus lost his job. Not me, but my mum's best friend. She manages all non-medical staff in a hospital, so all the cleaners, porters, caterers and admin staff. She had hired a porter who had indicated on his application that he had no prior criminal record. They do check up on this stuff, but it can take a while to get an answer back. So he had been working there for 8 weeks when she got notification that he'd lied and had a prior conviction. Unless it's something violent, which this wasn't, you can still work with the public. It just needs to be cleared a certain way. So, she had to call him into her office and tell him he was being suspended without pay while HR sorted it all out. That would take a few weeks. Then she could rota him back in. So, just to be clear, even though the guy had lied on his application, and the situation was all his own fault, she was telling him that he would still have a job there after they processed his HR stuff. Good outcome, right? He didn't think so. He heard suspended without pay, screamed at her that she was a freaking bee, threw a stapler at her, then chased her around her desk and out into the corridor, where he grabbed her by the throat and threatened to kill her. Needless to say, that got him fired, and also arrested for assault. So now he does have the type of criminal record which will severely limit his employment opportunities. Well done, mate. I'm a nurse. I used to take care of children with traumatic brain injuries and other severe cognitive disabilities. One such child was on a ventilator at night to provide some amount of daily support, but she would come off of the vent in the morning. Only the nurses touched ventilators. Tech's nursing assistants were not trained to do so. However, I worked with one particular CNA who was really spaced out all the time. Pretty sure she was baked every day, and thought that she was going to be helpful. I would remove this particular child's vent every morning. It would be directly attached to a tracheotomy tube, like a straw in your trachea to bypass your mouth. The important thing to know is that when a ventilator is covering your airway, that's great when it's on as in powered up and giving breaths. It does its job well. However, on this morning I removed the ventilator and powered the system down. My pager went off, so I rushed out of the room figuring I'd come back after to properly put the vent tubing back with the vent away from the bed. I handled the paged issue and went to the nurse's desk to get something, and here comes Space Cadet CNA all proud of herself. She was like, "Oh hey, I put so and so vent back on, so she's all set." All content and carefree, knowing she was taking care of business, working well out of her scope of practice. I almost crapped my scrubs. I had been out of that room for several minutes, long enough for the poor patient with the ventilator that was powered down and including her air away to suffocate. I gave the CNA a perplexed and panicked look and ran into the patient's room. She was not a pretty color and was breathing through the whole circuit, like breathing through a 2-foot hose attached to a toaster at the end. So long story short, there was some manual breaths and lots of 02 provided to get the poor kid back without any damage. Luckily, the CNA was fired. Jesus, that's horrifying, from all angles. First day, he made it to lunch, was caught taking toilet paper rolls from the bathroom out to his car on his lunch break because he was out at home. Come on man. Also, when I worked at FedEx, was stealing from boxes, selling items on eBay with FedEx air shipping discount which he needed his employee at for. Had a mail sorter get fired for bringing in her address labels and putting them on packages, so they were delivered to her house. Apparently her house was loaded with stuff. Not me. Old boss had promised to babysit a friend's pet goat and decided to bring it to the office in a box under her desk. Few hours went by, and the whole office started smelling awful, and people couldn't figure out where the freaking bleating came from. Take your kid to work day. Worked at a pizza joint for a few years in high school. Had only been working there for a few weeks as a dishwasher, and my manager, coked out of his mind, took a pizza fresh out of the oven and threw it onto a new cook. He had done similar things before I got hired, but was the last straw for the owners. Drug use is almost a requirement in food service tbh. A melted cheese is like napalm. Not a manager, but a specific employee comes to mind. He was hired about half a year after I was, to work in the same department. As standard practice, certain benefits don't come into effect until 90 days after being hired. Mostly vacation and 401k. This guy came in, and was admittedly a bit pretentious. Fancied himself an MMA fighter. Kept talking about how amazing he was in his social life, and in the ring. And basically acted better than everyone else. I should point out this professional MMA fighter was thinner than me, and I don't consider myself close to fit. His work ethic, on the other hand, was a bit subpar. He was supposed to assist me in various tasks in a diffusion bay. This was in the semiconductor business, but he never did, claiming he was helping other bays. Well, as he wasn't exactly up to par, his 90 trial was extended to 180 days. However, he kept working, even if it was barely above passing, and then, 180 days later, he got his benefits, and was made a permanent employee. Literally 5 minutes after being told, he decided to go on a half-hour bathroom break without telling anyone. When he came back, the manager asked him where he had gone. The guy told the manager he had gone to the bathroom, at which point the manager said, "For half an hour? You shouldn't take bathroom breaks that long." The guy then stormed out of the building. We all thought he had quit, until he came back a week later, acting like nothing happened. When the manager told him he had been fired for having 3 no-call no-shows, he got upset because he thought permanent employee meant cannot be fired for any reason. Methinks he took one too many hits in the head being a professional MMA fighter. Have a few. 1. Recently fired a manager because he left the store unlocked and a confused elderly lady wandered in and set off the alarm. This wasn't the first time he'd left the restaurant unlocked. 2. Guy was stealing Oreo cookies we gave away with kids' meals and shoving wrappers in his pocket. His pockets were so full they were falling out of his pockets. 3. I disrespected him by asking why he couldn't get to work on time so he wouldn't come inside and clock in, unless I apologized. 4. Stealing food that they already get half priced. 5. Stealing a phone a customer left on the table. 6. Employee was an hour-half late for work. Very argumentative. Bottle of vodka fell out of her purse. 7. Smoking weed while taking out trash. 8. Caught numerous times taking meat scraps from food being served and eating it in the back. 9. Threatening fellow employee with knife because other employee called him by his self-described persona name of Loki and no one else was allowed to do that. Not the greatest stories, but it takes all kinds in the restaurant business. This is one my boss told me about a former employee of his. After a long stint of poor performance, I had a private discussion with him about his future at the company. Later I found out he accused me of racial discrimination and gender-biased harassment. He was a gay, black male and I'm a straight, white male. HR got involved. During the investigation they confiscated his computer to search his emails. Turns out he spent all his time at work writing erotic novels, which he saved on his work computer and emailed to his personal account. His search history also revealed he was planning personal trips to various cities to attend huge orgies being held there. Pretty open and shut after that. He was fired. His lawyer had no case. Guy was working for a restoration company, through the agency I work with. Pretty sweet gig, per diem, hotel stay paid by the company, and daily pay for 10 hours of work. Guy turns 21 his 3rd day on the job, and decides to walk to the nearby bar and get trashed. Hotel notified us, but said they didn't want to kick him out. Cool, except dude shows up the next day with a water bottle half filled with orange juice and continental breakfast, and the other half vodka. Site supervisor calls me. I drive an hour to get there, and find this kid at the bar, from the previous night. with a freshly ordered Long Island. I tell him he can ride home with me, but not inebriated. He decided his drink was a better choice, so I'll let him know he was fired. He stayed at the bar all day waiting for the rest of the crew to get off work, and then attempted to bring several people into his hotel room, which had been cancelled by the company. They started to call the cops, but someone on the crew drove him home. Haven't heard from him since, and it's been about 1.5 years. I hope he's alright. Had a worker one time call in and inform me her grandmother had died and she needed the weekend off. Proceeded to post pictures of herself at Disney World on Facebook the next day with her family. I hired a kid that was just barely 18 years old to be a general guest service rep at the bowling center I used to manage. Basically, wipe down tables and return bowling balls to the settee racks. He was so nervous during the interview, but still answered the very general questions pretty well. So, I decided to give him a chance. This young man was the definition of instant regret. Skip all the weird crap he did in the 2 weeks he worked there to reason he was fired. A rather large woman came in with her family, and he refused to believe that she was really that big. This kid straight up walked up to her in front of her family and asked her if she was wearing a fat suit. I wish I could make it up, but that's just too far out there, even for me. I used to manage a pizza chain that rhymes with heaps of schmut. Long day at work was coming to an end when I told a new guy to vacuum the dining area. Came back 10 minutes later and heard the vacuum running but couldn't see it or the new guy. I looked over the bar and saw the new guy vacuuming while laying down. I really wanted to give him points for creativity, but he had been horrible all day, so I'll let him go. Heaps of schmut really describes their pizza well, too. I wasn't the manager, but I once worked at a Subway where one of my fellow employees accidentally got his entire plastic glove stuck in one of the sandwiches. He had only been working there for about 2 weeks, but he had already been in trouble before that. He was promptly fired after one of the customers found some plastic in their sandwich. One time before that he actually drove to Subway 3 hours before his shift and smoked weed. Then he sat in the parking lot and passed out and missed his entire shift. I wasn't really a manager. I was a kid who worked at a skating rink, but I was the DJ entertainer. Anyway, we had birthday party clowns. Couple of them were girls. One was an exhibitionist of sorts. She would ask me to help her into her clown costume on a Z jumpsuit thing. I was happy to help at first. Then she started taking off her clothes to put the costume on, and I was really excited to help, but thought it was a little inappropriate. But she got good tips from the dads. Costumes are pretty sheer. Things escalated to the point that she was pretty aggressively forcing herself on me and getting angry crazy because I wouldn't frick her under the DJ booth in her clown costume. I end up talking to the owner and manager about it, and she all of a sudden didn't work there anymore. She did come in occasionally, and one time I pulled her and a guy out of the jungle gym thing, like you see in a McDonald's play place, because they were fricking in it. Guy brought a gun to work. Bragged to all the employees that he'd accidentally forgot to leave it in his car. He was escorted off property by security. Please tell me this guy was packing heat at a pet shop or something mundane like that. I owned a small auto electric business and I just hired a young guy to clean and prep alternator and starter components in the back of the shop for assembly in the front. We were getting slammed with customers. Parts were going in the back but nothing was coming out. I look in the back. No kid. I searched throughout the shop and outside. No kid. Then, across a busy 6-lane road that ran in front of the shop, I see the kid talking to someone who is washing a dune buggy. By the time the kid made it back to the shop, about 45 minutes later, I had his personal effects waiting for him at the counter with a pink slip on top. I didn't have the pleasure of actually firing him. I was too busy in the back doing his job. My office manager paid him his 20 minutes from petty cash. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. bye 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 bye.